Hello, everyone who's being able to attend. This is Alex. He's going to be giving us a Fusion 360 demo. Thank you so much for being here. RIT IDSA is doing a few of these events going through the semester, so please follow us on Instagram to find out what we're doing. If you're an RIT student, we also send out emails, so please make sure to check that. And I'm just going to hand it off straight to Alex, and he's going to get us started.
Sounds great. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, IDSA RIT, for having me here. Hi, everyone. I'm Alex. I'm excited to share some, some ideas on Fusion. Let me share my screen and show you. Oh, I need to have access to sharing screen.
1 second, sorry.
Sure, no worries.
Jack, do you want to give somebody else sort of control over this if there's some issues, if you're leaving?
I can do that. I don't know if co-host is enough. I can make, or I'll pass along. Let's see.
Can everyone see this? Great.
Liam, have fun with that.
Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to show you a few examples of work that I've done with Fusion. One thing that I like about Fusion is that it's very easy to go between more organic shapes and also more geometric shapes. So it has a few different settings for that. So just flying through some designs in here so that you can see some of the the work. Everything that you see here has been modeled and rendered in Fusion, which I feel that sometimes people don't quite know. They feel that the rendering tool for Fusion is not as strong, but for me it works very well. What you see here is a tool that I did, also applying some Boroni patterns to give it kind of a generative design feel. This is a drum set. The cool thing about this is that it's completely parametric. So all of the drums that you see in there are based on the same assembly. And then for each of the drums, I just go there and change the dimensions, and everything else is updated. Some design classics in there, but also looking at materials and how they are presented in Fusion. This was another exercise, for bass guitar. This is a chair that I designed using generative design. I'm guessing that some of you have heard about that tool. The way that I designed it, this was, the seat and back were done with traditional surfaces. But then for the bass, what I did was to set up some points where weight needed to be supported. So if you look at some cylinders, in the metal structure, that's all that I set up. Everything else that you see, all of the cool shapes, were created by the generative design tool. So I just applied some forces and some points where these needed to support the weight, and then Fusion came up with this design. And then more, another example. This was a quick concept when the new Volkswagen van, the electric one, was announced. What I felt is that the new design lost a lot of the character of the cool, vintage one. So I took a stab at, how, like a more, I don't know, like a more connected, redesign could look like. If any of you are curious about, Autodesk, a couple of things to keep in mind. You should go to Autodesk University. The website address is there. They hold a conference each year. This year is November 17 to 20. They have over 700 classes each year, and they cover everything from Maya, Fusion, Inventor, 3D Max, and then a lot of different industries: architecture, media and entertainment, design, manufacturing. They do a lot of things on generative design. So the cool thing, normally this conference is in Las Vegas, but this year is online and it's free. So I strongly suggest that you check it out. The other aspect of Autodesk University is that all of the classes are stored and documented in the website. So for example, all of the examples that that I showed you before, most of them are classes that I've given at Autodesk University. So if you go there and you search, for in this case for Lobos, you will be able to find the classes and then look at the handouts and listen to the video recordings of the classes. But again, there's literally thousands of classes on a lot of on many different topics that you can check out. So with that, I will move on and hold on. Okay, so with that, I'm gonna move on to Fusion. And I'm guessing you can see the Fusion window now, right? Good, awesome. So I think that the goal for today was to show some free-forming modeling, and that's the part that I love the most about Fusion. The ability to create very organic shapes. And what I like more than creating organic shapes is that I love that you can model in real time. What I feel is that many times the traditional process for CAD is that you need a plane, then you need a sketch in 2D, and then you need to apply a feature that turns that 2D sketch into a 3D shape. So the process is a little bit disconnected. And what I love with Fusion is this ability of designing in real time. So let me show you what I mean by that. When you first look at the workspace in Fusion, you are in the parametric mode. So that's more traditional. Today, I think most of what we are going to talk about is on the T-splines sculpt free-forming environment. So you do that by clicking on the purple box that you see here. So that moves you from the parametric BREP environment to the T-splines environment. Once that you are here, let me show you what I feel that makes Fusion unique. I'm going to create a box. So at first it looks very similar. You have a plane that you need to select. Let me bring this here. And then once you have the plane selected, then you can apply a shape. At this point, you can play with different dimensions for the shape that you want to create, and you can also add different subdivisions to the shape. What you notice is that as I go up in number of faces, the edges are more tight. So you never get to a straight edge, but for example here, this looks more like a cube. If I bring this down to very low divisions, it looks more like a cylinder or like a pillow. So that's something, it depends on the type of design that you want to create. And actually, I will get into more of that in a second. But like right now, for example, if I keep this shape, I have this shape that I can play with. And I guess the key element, once I have any geometry in this environment, is the edit form. So that will be the go-to tool that you want to use whenever you want to play with Fusion. When you go to edit form, which is under modify, you have a few options. The ones that I think that you need to focus on the most are the selection filter, because you can select only points or, I'll admit, okay, Tom was in the waiting room. You can also have edges, or you can have faces that you can select, or a number of them. Once you select geometry, then you see that this 3D, it's called 3D orbit. It's an icon that has a lot of different components. If you pull from the arrows, that moves the geometry in a different axis. So as I'm doing this, what I want you to imagine is if you were using a parametric modeling tool, how hard would it be to create each of these steps? And you wouldn't be able to see them moving in real time. And then at some point saying, oh, that's what I like. That's what I want. So you can move the arrows, you can move them in multiple dimensions. If you look at these slide bars, those help you to rotate the geometry. Then you have some bars. If you pull the bars, those help you to scale the object, the faces that you selected in different dimensions. And then if you select the center of that orbit, you can scale in all dimensions. So what I feel is that when you are modeling in Fusion, this is the key element that makes Fusion very unique. Because from here, you can start creating a lot of very interesting shapes. Like for example, I can take, this shape and I can move it up. I can, for example, go to this side, change this to edge. So now I'm selecting a line. If I click once, I select just one, section. If I double click, I am selecting the entire section. So now I can grow that, in that direction, or maybe I want to grow it in all multiple directions. I can take this point, for example, and I can move it. So what you see here is that at this point, I'm basically, sculpting. Any shape that I want. Is this making sense? Does anyone have any questions so far? Okay. So this is the most basic way of working with Fusion when you want to edit the geometry that you have in there. The other cool thing that Fusion has is the ability to create additional geometry. So for example, if I select this section and now I hold the Option key. If you are using Windows, you will use the Alt key. I hold the Alt key. Now I select this arrow and I pull it up. You see that it's adding new geometry. And if I keep doing that, it's adding new sections. So you can imagine how quickly I can create geometry. And every time that I have a new face, I can start playing with this. So this gives you a lot of flexibility, to work with your design. Once you are kind of happy with what you see, you can hit OK, and then you are back to the main space. Sometimes when you are playing with these shapes, you might get to areas where maybe you did something that was too drastic. For example, in here, you see that this face is it's overlapping basically. So if at some point you want to delete any geometry, like in this case, I want to give this a little bit of relief, I select that edge and I hit the delete key, and that that removes it. You see that the shape changes, and that's something that you need to play with, where to see if that solves the problem. If that doesn't solve the problem, then maybe I can go back, select that edge, and I will try to move it. So now I'm able to remove that overlap, and the overall shape stays closer to what I originally had. So I feel that these are the basic elements that make Fusion very interesting. Again, the ability to manipulate geometry so quickly, and the ability to add geometry very quickly. So let me show you a quick example of something that has a little bit more definition in it. So what I will try to do is to create a tool very similar to the yellow one that I showed you earlier, the one with the generative design pattern. I don't think we'll create the generative design pattern itself, but I will show you a quick way of creating that shape. So I, I'm creating a new file, and then, I'm going to, the sculpt environment again. So in this case, I'm going to select a box. I select this plane. I give it some dimensions. And in this case, what I'll do is add maybe more subdivisions on this side. The idea that I have is that, the ends of this will eventually become the legs, for the stool. So that's why I want a little bit more definition there. On the other ends, I don't need, more definition. I kind of like how soft they look. One thing that I can add is to add symmetry, so that, I make sure, that the stool looks symmetrical in all sides. So I'm setting up symmetry, sideways, and I'm also setting up symmetry, front and back. That way, again, the process is very quick. If I want to create just, one, if I want to alter one side of the model, it will be reflected on all four sides. So I have my general shape, and normally that's what you will start with. Then in edit form is where you will start, sculpting it. So for example, in this case, the first thing that I want to do is I want to, make this thinner. So that's, fairly easy. And now the other thing that I want to do is I want to make it, I wanted to have more curvature. Right now you see that from right to left, this is very, very straight, and I wanted to have, a little bit, a more dynamic shape. So I changed two edges, and you'll see that as you are playing, you'll notice how sometimes using vertex, points versus faces versus edges gives you different, ways of playing with the geometry. So in this case, I select the center, and I'm going to make that, wider. Now I need to go, to the next section, and you see that because of the symmetry, I only need to work on one side of this. And basically, what I'm, doing is getting some of the curvature, the way that I want it, so that it has a little bit more continuity. And this is something that you do by feel. I mean, when I'm looking at this, I'm kind of looking for, a curvature that feels right. So I kind of like that. I'm going to go here on the other side, and I'm going to make the opposite. I'm going to bring this in. I think that will add, an interesting contrast to this. So this is looking interesting, from, the top. When I look at this from the side, it looks very flat. So what I can do now is, for example, I can take, this line, and I can bring it down. Oops, sorry. So I have the center line, and I'm going to bring it down. Now I'm going to, play with the other sides and do a little bit of adjustment. So you see that now, this looks a lot more interesting, I feel. At this point, for example, I could take some lines, instead of going all the way around, I can take just a section, and you see that is just affecting the middle of this component. So let's say that for now, I'm kind of happy with how this looks. But now, it's a pillow. It's not a stool yet. So I need to create, the legs. What I'll do is, change these to faces, and I'm going to take these faces, because that I will pull those and hold the Alt key or Option key, and that will add geometry to it. So that will start creating the sections for the sides. So I go to the arrow, I hold the Option key before I drag, and you see that now this is adding, geometry. So I do that a few times. The reason why I do that, let me go back. If I pull this down, you see that it's pulling the faces a lot. So it's actually making this side section very wide. If I go back and instead of just one big pool, I do a few, you see that the thickness is maintained a little bit better. So let's pull this down. So now that I have that, for example, I can take these sections and I can rotate them a little bit to give it an angle. And let's say that I take this part and I scale it so that it has a little bit of a taper. If I go up, I'm going to taper it a little bit more, and I keep going there and selecting multiple faces, and then going back to the front view and taper it a little bit more. So now this has a more interesting shape. I feel that at least here now this is too bumpy, so I can take this side. And again, you see that in here, I'm kind of reacting to how the geometry is looking like. And this is the part, again, the part that I like about Fusion, that I feel that it gives you a lot of flexibility. I have a general idea of my design, but I'm really using Fusion to sculpt and to define how I want this to look. So, I'm kind of happy with how this looks. I'm gonna go to the side, and I realize that from the side, this looks very flat. So again, I can take some of the faces, for example, in here, and I can rotate them. I can take this line and I can bring it up. And I'm going to take a couple of them to make it more gradual. And now that I'm, I'm liking this, I just feel that it's maybe a little bit too short. So I can select everything and just, scale it so that it has a little bit better proportion overall. Does anyone have any questions so far with any of the steps that I did?
The only question I have is, how do you go back and edit the mirror lines, like the initial, when you create the form?
Right. So in this case, let's say that, I show this to my client, and then the client says that, they like it, but they don't want this to be symmetrical. They are thinking that this will connect to another section. So actually, one side of the legs need to be different. If you want to remove the symmetry, if you go to symmetry, there's an option where you can clear symmetry. And when you click on the object, it should remove the lines. So now there's no symmetry anymore. So for example, now if I go to edit form, I take, this section, for example, it's only going to affect that section. If I take only this leg, it will only affect that leg. If my client changes their mind again, and it happens every now and then, I can always go back and add symmetry again. So if I go back to symmetry and select mirror internal, I can select two faces, and Fusion will create a symmetry right between them. And in this case, if I want to bring back the four-sided symmetry, then I do the same on the other direction. And that's how you bring it back. Gotcha. Or you can keep just one if that's what you need.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So let's leave this here for now, and let me show you a couple of things that you can do. So one thing that I like now is, let's say that I like the shape of the design overall, but I feel that it has too many sections. And maybe because of that, as careful as I was trying to get a nice continuity in the surface, it still looks a little bit choppy. So sometimes cleaning up your geometry is actually something very useful. In this case, if I remove this edge here, for example, I will run into problems because you see that on the other side, Fusion, played with the geometry a little bit different. So that's not something that I want to, to delete, but maybe there's opportunity for deleting, this part in the middle. So I double click on it, that selects the entire loop. And now if I hit the delete key, there was no issue with it. And you actually see that now the shape looks a little bit, cleaner. If you look at, this side, for example, versus this side, you see that, the one on the right actually looks a little bit more, smooth than this one. So I will do the same with this. If I had symmetry still, then that wouldn't be necessary. I can try my lock and see what happens here. Yeah, actually, it doesn't look that bad. But I think I have plans for this that I will show you in a second. So I'm going to leave this there for now. I'm going to do the same here at the top. I'm going to remove these lines. You see how this looks a lot nicer, a lot more smooth now. So this, I feel that, is something that you can have a lot of fun with. I feel that edit form, you can spend a lot of time there and really, refine how you use vertices and, edges, etc., etc. There's a couple of extra tools that I wanted to show you, and, we still have time to continue playing with this. If you remember this tool that I showed you, the yellow one, it had some openings on the side. So that is actually very easy to do with, Fusion. The way that it works is that if you go to the modify bar, you look for bridge. And bridge has two functionalities. Let me show you the first one. Let's say that I select this face and this face, and now I go to the other side and I select the corresponding faces. I'm going to show preview, and I'm going to leave that to 3, and I hit OK. Fusion automatically connects those faces. On the contrary, if I go to bridge and I select, let me check something, and I select, for example, these faces, which are, like, let's say the, one side of that section, and I select this other section, then Fusion will create a hole in between. So this is a very quick way for you to, edit your geometry. Once you have this, if you want to clean, your geometry, then, that's part of sculpting. For example, I see that I have too many subdivisions in there, so I'm going to clean them up a little bit and see if that helps. And I think it's actually helping. I'll do the same. So now you see that this transition looks, a lot cleaner. I can go back to edit form. This section at the bottom looks very, very thick. So I can go here, select that, and with the scale, I can bring it down. So that is looking, nicer. And then, you can keep working with, your geometry any way that you want to, until you get the result, that you want. So you see the difference of, this section that was, is open versus, the other one. Once you are happy with the shape that you have, you can click on Finish Form, and Finish Form will take the T-splines geometry that you have. Ooh, so I have a few things that I need to. It will check for surface continuity. So in this case, it's telling me that there's a couple of issues here that I need to address. I don't really know what's going on in there. Let's see. So I'm removing some geometry. I already see it here. There's an issue with this surface. It's not rendering right. You see that there's some point there. My guess is that that is the problem. Let me try now. Yep, it's still giving me the problem. So this is something that I will need to go back. When I was editing the shape, there was something that got overlap or that got too complicated. So I will need to fix that. But in this case, because we don't have a lot of time, I'm just gonna try to go back to before the we did the bridge, and if I hit Finish Form, then there was no complication in that geometry. So now we go back to the main environment for Fusion, which is the VREP parametric environment. So now this shape is can be further edited. It's one body in here. So at this point, for example, if I change my design, let's say that I want to create a circle that cuts through this tool. This is a process that I feel is more familiar, more similar to what you would do, let's say in SolidWorks or Inventor. I'm drawing a circle there, and if I finish the sketch, then I can extrude that. I can change it to, let's say, symmetric. So at that point, I can decide, if I wanted to cut through. So now I have a hole, or oops, or I can go back and edit the feature, because maybe I decide that instead of cutting it, I want to join it. So I actually want to create that geometry and make it part of the design. One cool thing when you are working between these two environments is that you can always go back and edit the forms that you have. So for example, if now I realize that this tool is too short, I can go back to my original form in the history timeline. If I right click, I can go to edit. So now I'm back in the T-splines environment. So for example, if my intention is to make this taller, I can select these faces, for example. I can move them up, and you see that the ghost of the original design is there. So you see that now the shape changed a little bit. I can move this, for example, to the side, and I'll do the same on this side. So I hit OK. This adjusts the shape, and then if I exit this, then the design will be updated. Any questions so far?
I have one for you, Alex. The can you go back to where you use that shape to drill the holes?
Yes. So here's the sketch, and then here is the feature itself. Is that what you wanted to go back to?
Yeah. So instead of it being a rod, they're holes.
Right. So when you create an extrude, you can you can tell Fusion to either join that extrusion with the existing geometry that you have, or you can use it as a cutting tool. So in that case, it will cut whatever is in its way.
Mm-hmm.
You can also you do an intersect. So in that case, it will show just the overlap.
Right.
And the cool thing even is sometimes when you do this, for example, if I select cut, you see that this has an option for objects to cut. Right now, I only have one body, the stool. But you can imagine an assembly where you want to cut a wheel, but not the, not the axle, or you want to cut the fender, but not the door, something like that.
Right.
So you can actually expand here, and then you can select the bodies, that this operation will be applied.
Yeah.
If I wanted, for some reason, I wanted this to be, two separate bodies, then I just create new body. And I hit OK, and now you see the cylinder, and now there's two bodies in the space. There's the cylinder, and there's the stool.
So once you drill the hole, you can go in and fillet that new edge around the hole?
Yes. So for example, if I decide that I want this to be cut, I apply it. So now I can go to fillet, and I can add, I don't know, like 5 millimeter, fillet.
And I apologize. One last question that always sort of confusing me, moving from the geometric to the sculpt side of things. Can you the new surface that was created by the hole? So you take and cut with some sort of geometry through an organic shape. Can you go back and start sculpting that new surface? I mean, first of all, I'm just amazed at what you can do with these organic surfaces without things blowing up. It's just, I just know when I put a spline curve of any sort or surface into SolidWorks, then you get a couple of those working together. It's just so really amazing stuff. So I don't know, once you go into the sculpt and then go to the geometry side, can you start sculpting newly cut surfaces? I wouldn't be surprised if you couldn't, because that's just asking a lot. But
right. So yes and no. I mean, I can go back. For example, let's say that we decided that this will. See, Kim, you are a very good client, because now you told me again that this is not a hole anymore. Now you wanted to go back and be the cylinder. So let's say that this is a new body, right? So we're gonna go with the cylinder instead of the hole. So in this case, and interesting, the fillet moved to the edge.
Right, nice.
At any given point, I can always go back to the T-splines, to the sculpt environment. When that happens, I cannot bring back any geometry with me. I only see it there. So in this case, I mean, what I could do is, for example, to create a cylinder, or to create a box. I don't know, like if I create. Oh, actually, let me show. We use something that is gonna look somehow similar. If I create a quad ball, I'm just coming close with this, and I will add symmetry. Now I can take that shape and faces, and I can start expanding. So I can finish this, go back to finish form, and now you see that that is a third body that I have in the space. So I guess what I'm saying is you can always go back to geometry that you created in T-splines, and you can go back and edit. So again, I can go back here. For example, let me show you an example. Let's say that I want to combine geometry. So this tool I will use the new, I guess, sausage that I created, and I will cut it, right? So this was similar to that exercise.
Right.
I can go back here to edit, and I will, take these shapes and move them up.
Nice.
So that you can do. What I cannot do is to create something in the parametric environment and transform it into a T-spline.
Right.
I mean, yes, you can do it, but that's in another chapter. Yeah. It's not. I guess what I'm showing right now is very straightforward.
No, that's cool. It's very cool stuff.
I want to show. I think we have a few minutes. There's a tool that I recently discovered, and actually the class that I'm preparing for Autodesk University for this year has some of that. So I wanted to share that with you because I think that you guys are going to like it a lot. One one feature that always takes a lot of time to model is to create anything that is wireframe. So imagine like a metal basket. It takes a lot of time. It's very complex. Yep. So in this case, what I want to show you is, let's say that I create, this quad ball. And right now you see that there's edges in here, right? So for example, if I imagine that my bottom section, I want to turn that into a basket. I'm going to select this, but right now if I select it, Fusion selects everything. You see that the edges and the faces are selected. I can go here to selection filter, and I will deactivate select all, and then activate only T-spline edges. So now if I select this, you see that it's selecting only the edges. I can go to this tool called pipe. And pipe will take those edges and automatically create a wireframe. Let me just adjust this so that you can, so that you can see it. So you see how it's beginning to take shape. Right now it has a square profile, but I can change it to a round one. And if I go here to segments, right now there's a lot of segments. I can bring this down to simplify the geometry. In this case, it actually starts blending some of the shapes. So depending on what you want, if you want something more precise, you leave it with a lot of segments. If you want something more connected, kind of organic, this is what you do, and you hit OK. So now, out of that ball, I have this wireframe.
Wild.
So again, this is super quick, and when I finish form, now I have, I go back and I have the, the two bodies as solid shapes. So this is a solid shape, made out of the wire. And when I say solid, what I mean is, if I do, a section view of this, you can see that it's, a solid body.
Very cool. Awesome.
So I don't know if anyone has any questions about what I showed, or if there's any features that you wonder about in Fusion. I mean, I see that we have a few minutes, a few extra minutes. If there's something that you wanted to ask about, or maybe I can show how some tools are used. there's one more that I think you might like. So let's go back here to this tool. And let's go back to the axles tool that we created. So I was mentioning that Fusion in general tends to leave very soft edges, right? The idea for that is Fusion, T-splines are designed so that they give you surface continuity and a tangent surface all throughout. So that's why you see that everything is very smooth. But there's ways that you can add some creases to your designs. If you go to modify, there's this option that is called crease. So see what happens. Right now, you remember all of this is very soft, right? If I start clicking on these edges, Fusion starts treating them as a crease. So I hit OK, and you see how this is transformed. So this is with no crease, and this is with crease. So it gives you a really nice, definition. The other cool thing is you see that I didn't go all the way down. So Fusion will, blend that crease and make sure that it smooths out into a flat surface. Depending on your geometry, sometimes that will look very nice and very clean. Sometimes you will still see a little bit of a bump. So in this case, I feel that because of the geometry that I was coming from, you can still see some of that bump. But now that I come here, you see that that gives you, a very sharp edge, very interesting structure. So in this case, for example, I could try applying a fillet, if I want to add, just a little bit more finish to that edge. And then sometimes the fillet will work as a single radius fillet. Sometimes you will need a variable fillet, meaning that you can set up, at these points, the fillet is 0, and then at these other points, the fillet will have a different value. In case that you needed to go from 0 to something, or from something to 0, or another number. But again, I think that this is another tool that is very cool, very simple to use, and that can give you your design a different direction.
Alex, I had a slightly different tangent. I had suggested to students last semester, when COVID was raging and everybody was concerned about being able to find jobs after graduation and everything, I had suggested to everybody to go on to, well, any of the tutorials for Fusion, if you haven't taken a Fusion class, and get exposed to it, because for a standalone package, if you're going to be doing your own design consulting with companies, or you're going to work with a startup or something, it's a great entry to advanced CAD software. Have you found that some of the grad students after graduating found it a useful tool, or that it made life easier for them, that they might not have, they've found work, or either work or employment that they might not have found otherwise?
Great question, Kim. So I feel that Fusion, has a lot of potential, but it hasn't become an industry standard. So I don't feel that someone will get a job just because they know Fusion. But in contrast, what I've noticed is that Fusion allows you to learn so much about, like you said, like tradition, like parametric modeling, surface modeling, electronics, CAM, sheet metal. So I feel that someone, with the time that you could spend in another program, just focusing on one or two models, modeling areas, with Fusion, you can cover so much. So what I've noticed is that our grads get hired because they know how to run CAM. They know how to run sheet metal. They know how to run all of this because it's so easy to do in Fusion. So I feel that for me, the big benefit of us using Fusion is that it gives you a very wide mindset. It gives you a very wide skill set. that in other tools, because they're so complex and specialized, you cannot do it. You spend months, sometimes years, just honing down on one of their capabilities.
Yeah, I would think, and I don't know enough people in industry and startups, but I would think for a startup that's looking for a CAD package to start with, because it is so versatile, it almost seems like a no-brainer as a way to go, because it gives you so many different tools in one package at a really reasonable price.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, SolidWorks, Rhino, a lot of those softwares, the license for 1 year is about, I'm going to say like around 5K, give or take. Fusion runs under subscription. So right now, if you get a 1 year subscription, it's 450. So divide that over 12. And it works like Netflix. If I finished a big job and I don't have anything, coming up for the next few months, I just cancel it. And then I go back and rejoin. So that is a huge thing. I mean, you don't need to have a lot of investment to get Fusion up and running. You just need to, enroll and pay month by month. Another cool thing, and I know that this is a big thing, especially for ID, Fusion runs natively in both Mac and PC.
It's a big deal.
That is a big deal.
Yeah, I'm sure that was part of the reason I had trouble earlier today.
Right. Oh, and that's the reason why many of us have two machines, because we have the Mac for everything and we love it, but we need to run one or two tools in Windows.
Right.
So that's the cool thing with Fusion, and it's not even that it runs it; it keeps all of your files in the cloud, so you are accessing the direct file. It's not like you are saving a version that then you open at the office and now you have two different versions running. Everything goes back to the same, data set.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did anyone else have any questions for Alex as we're getting to the end of our time here? If not, then I presume you all know freeform modeling like experts after that, so that's great. I just want to say thank you so much, Alex, for giving us this demo. It was really helpful. Obviously, as Kim and Alex were just talking about, Fusion is a really versatile program. There's lots of different things you can do with it. So and it's also, I believe it's free for students.
Yep.
Yes, so that's why it's also really helpful for something to start off as. You can learn the various different functions on it, and it transfers well to other programs as you go forward. So if that's it, I think I just want to say thank you to Alex. Thank you to everyone who was able to stop by and watch this demo. Make sure to follow RIT IDSA on Instagram. You can find out what else we're doing. We have been having a lot of fun with this. We got one more 3D workshop coming up tomorrow, which is Chris Ferentz. He's going to be doing a keyshot demo, so we're all really excited for that. Make sure to stop by. And I think I'll let everyone go from there. Good?
Sounds great.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thanks for putting this together, Jack.
Yes,
Nice
really.
Yeah, thank you. This is wonderful. Yep.
It's going well with the Zoom. I think we're still getting the kinks worked out. Kim, really took a bullet for us there.
It was painful, I can tell you.
But we're learning, and I think also what'll be really helpful is as we move forward, at least being able to pass off this style of a workshop or lecture, even when things are moved back to in person, I think is something that we can do to help expand on the events and everything. So I think we're still getting things worked out, but as they move forward, we'll be able to have bigger and better events going on. So really happy that both of you were able to help us out here, give some great tutorials to these programs, and also Sheila as well. Yes.
Yeah.
Forgot. Thank you, Sheila. All right, I'll let everyone go and have a pleasant rest of your weekend.
Good.
Alex.
Bye.
See ya.